Okay, so thanks to Henry, we've got Fioretta, right? This is a new documentary from Matthew Mishory. He co-wrote it with Rob Levine. It is produced by uh, Alvaro Fernandez, um, Bradford L. Shield. It's executive produced by Joey Schoenberg, Randal Schoenberg, Rob Levin, co-produced by Annetta Fordecker, and line produced by Kevin Granahan and Stephen Swerko. Ohad Stemati handles the music. Makiji Towadsky, cinematography. Mark Cohen is on editing duties. Magdalena Zemanova, production design. Costume design is Teresa Kopeka. Hair and makeup, we've got Denisa Rosenberger Orova, Michaela Kaleskalova, and Edward Jimenez. So featuring in this, we have a host of people. All right, so we have got well, there's two things, right? There's a kind of a little vignette running through, and in that you've got the young Randall played by Flip Finkenstein, the neighbor played by Veronica Kopravovo, the clerk played by Thomas Pezinka, yeah, there's a few people. Young Michaela, played by Gabriella Farr. The pianist, played by Sabrina Hazanova. The voice of the child, Samuel Bodeman. And the violinist, Johannes Freischmann. Right, but then in the main thing, right, we have Randal Schoenberg. We have Joey Schoenberg playing them. Obviously, they're themselves. Everyone now is appearing as themselves. You have Nura Schoenberg, Nolan Lobovich, Wolf Eric Ecclestein, Ty Shalev, Dora Schoenberg, Arnie Schoenberg, Andreas Fingernagal, Christoph Navarrete, Greg Gogosh, Nathan Schulzberg, Renetta Pavlovakov. Yeah, there's just a host of different people being interviewed and talking about experiences and genealogy and all of that kind of stuff. Okay, so the gist of the piece is history-obsessed Randy Schoenberg brings his reluctant teenage son Joey along with him for the journey of a lifetime through Europe and the centuries to reclaim 500 years of their family story. Along the way, they encounter kings, mystics, and a false messiah, as well as numerous ordinary and extraordinary people who witness Europe's tumultuous past. And the relationship between father and son is forever changed. Randy is renowned for recovering Nazi hosted art, but his greatest achievement might just be reuniting the fractured and scattered shards of his own family. It's filmed on location across Austria, Czech Republic, and Italy. Fioretta is a meditative and intensely visual exploration. So, yeah, there you go. Now, um, Matthew has this statement. When I first met Randy Schoenberg, he mentioned his interest in family history. This made sense. He had a very famous grandfather, but Randy's interest stretched further back through the centuries. He had been looking into it for quite a while and had made some progress. How far back could he go? I asked, expecting an impressive answer. The 1850s, perhaps. 500 years, he said, all the way back to the formation of the Jewish ghetto in Venice. And he had the encyclopedic list of names and documents to prove it. To characterize Randy's achievement as impressive would be a gross understatement. And his burning obsession, his passion for reclaiming and retelling his own origin story and helping others do the same is no more interesting. It's an epic personal quest across centuries and continents, one that brings to light and personalizes half a millennium of European history, carnage, and achievement. I had an inkling it could also be the basis of an unforgettable film, the possibility of a further link in the chain, a final, for now, grave to track down somewhere in Europe's forgotten centuries pulled Randy back into his quest. This time, he opted to make the journey with his son, Joey, who was about to turn 18 and set out on a journey of his own. This father son voyage through time and space, Austria and Czech Republic, Italy, California, serves as backdrops, became the narrative backbone of our film. I'm not drawn to overly dramatic or polemic, polemical documentaries. I like to watch characters change subtly, relationships deepen, dynamics quietly shift. And this is what happens in Fioretta. Randy and Joey are changed by their time together, but what they see and by the people they meet. The film has a light touch, but it never shies away from the weight of history which permeates every frame. A new generation of Europeans will have to decide what to do about their inherited history. Randy has sought to reassemble and reunite family, known and rediscovered, genetic and created. I filmed Fioretta as a narrative feature that happens to be a documentary, avoiding the trappings and conventions of the genre have proliferated with streaming. This is not an interviews and experts movie. The camera roams, settling to catch objects and locations and faces. Crucial emotional sequences are captured to it control film and fragments of Randy's first trip to Prague just after the fall of communism come to life in a 16mm film within a film. The journey was transformational, not only for the film's subjects, but also for those of us lucky enough to come along for the ride, watching through a vintage low contrast lens. So that was the idea behind this documentary, right? And yeah, it's not an interviewing head. Matthew definitely shied away from that approach, you know. Now there are interviews at kind of because Randy is talking to all of these different people, asking for their opinions and all of that, which I think something like this is always going to be interesting, you know? Like it's always fascinating when you see these connective tissues, these threads through time, you know? I think there were definitely compelling moments. I don't know really if I saw this transformation with father and son, because I think Randy's always been interested in this. Joey, you could clearly see he was not that thrilled. Not that he hated it, but it's just not his jam. You know, you saw that. And at the end, he may have discovered a gravestone, but it and you know, he said the words, but you couldn't, I don't think you visually saw this change in him, you know, but that's fine. Not everyone is expressive in certain ways. So just because we don't see it doesn't mean it didn't happen. You know, it's definitely a roaming camera, right? Which is fine. I did find a lot of the close-ups very odd choices. I was a bit perplexed about some of those. And there were scenes in there that I don't know if it really brought anything to this, right? When we were in we were in one of this house at the towards the beginning, and there's a pianist playing and a violinist, and we're on this scene for ages. And like the music's lovely, you know what I mean? I love a little classical, right? But I just don't know what it brought. And then we're doing these close-ups on the pianist and the violinist and the hands, and then back to Randy and Joey and some of the other people, and you're just like, huh? Like there's a transition scene of Joey lying on his bed, and then we cut to something else, and it was just like, I don't know why that's there. I don't know. It doesn't do anything. It's not an insight into Joey. It's nothing. It's throwaway. Right? I was a little baffled by that. You know, so there are a lot of those scenes. And again, there are a lot of these kind of, for me, odd camera choices. Now, that's just for me. Right? I'm sure other people can watch this and find those things very fascinating. You know, I don't think we needed the pool game at the beginning, or necessarily the cooking, and you know, just those things. I don't know what they really brought, you know. And I think at times, because we're getting so many close-ups and stuff like that, it felt a little performative, because you then have these grins on people's faces that felt kind of forced, you know. Now, they might not have been, but that's how it came across. But when we are looking around the graveyards and the memorials and, you know, some of the houses and the synagogues, and that's very fascinating. That really is. One thing I thought was super frigging crazy, right, was only towards the very end, when they're in the castle, do we have gloves being used to look at these old ass books. Only one time. All the other times they're going, it's like, oh, this book is like from 18, blah, blah, blah. It's super old. And they're just flipping through with their hands, which is insane, right? You always wear gloves when handling old manuscripts and books, because the oils in your skin can damage, you know, like your hands might not be clean, right? There's all of these things that could damage the work, and they're just flicking through. It's just like, yo, what are you doing, people? What are you doing? This is insane. But yeah, it's interesting, you know. Like, I don't know if we really got what all of this means to Randy, because obviously it's important to him. But there's a point where he's just like, oh, like my parents or, a relative really loved this place. And now I do. And it's just like, do you love it for what you've experienced? Are you loving it because they loved it? Because that's sometimes it did seem that he's like, oh, they love this and I love this. And it's just like, but do you though? What's actually your feelings about this? That's what I want to know. And I don't know if that always came across. You know what I mean? It's yeah, it's just over 2 hours for this documentary. It does feel long. Um, you know, as I said, it's very interesting. I would have probably cut it down a bit, you know what I mean? But it is very interesting. We I mean, we've seen a few, right? I do think now, if you like kind of genealogy, you'll like this, right? So Matthew's also directed, I think he's like other ones, like he had Who Are the Marcuses, right? So I think he's done several things like this. And remember, last year we looked at The Last of the Winthrops, which was super interesting. So I think if those are your thing, then Fioretta will definitely work for you. It's still on the festival circuit, I believe, but if I can find some release information, I will place those on the website for you. But yeah, genealogists, this is a fascinating journey through Europe, you know? And I'm assuming now Joey is at cookery school. And probably Randall is digging into more family trees. But yeah, Fioretta.